Thank you, everybody, for joining us for today's How to Raise Money to Keep Your Community Active webinar with Crowdfunder and Sport England. I'm Zoe, the community manager at Crowdfunder, and I will be hosting today's session. I've also been joined by Becky Evans from Sport England, who'll be talking through the Movement Fund for you all today, their exciting funding opportunity that is available to eligible projects. And we've also been joined by Stuart Edwards from the Friends of Shaftesbury Swimming. They actually had a recent crowdfunding campaign where they were eligible and approved for match funding from Sport England as well through the Movement Fund. So Stuart's going to talk through their project from kind of that insider's perspective, so you can get some hints and tips from someone that's been there and done it as well. So do get those questions ready for both Becky and Stuart. A little bit of housekeeping then before we get started. We have allowed 60 minutes for this session. We want to include a Q&A at the end, so we'll make sure we leave as much time as possible to answer your questions. If you do want to ask a question, then please just pop that into the chat box that some of you are already using, which is fabulous. Alternatively, you can ask it directly into the Q&A box as well, and we'll be checking both of those throughout the session, and we'll make sure that we answer as many of those as possible. This is a live session. However, the whole webinar is going to be recorded and you will receive a follow-up email from ourselves, and that email will include a link to the recording so you can play that back and watch it in your own time. We'll also include all of the different links to the resources that we talk through today as well. So you'll have everything that you need in your inbox in order to take the next steps in your fundraising. If you find that you have any issues with your internet connection, the best thing to do is to just exit the webinar. So just leave the live room and then follow the link to come back in that you would have received when you registered. You will hopefully rejoin the live room with no issues. The one thing that you probably won't have access to is any of the previous chat that's gone on in the chat box. So if you need to be brought back up to speed at any point, then just drop us a message and we can go back over things for you. Now, hopefully you can see my video kind of sat alongside the slide. If for whatever reason it's covering any of the content, you can go up to the right hand of your screen and you can select side by side speaker view, and that should hopefully remove any video from the slide. Right, let's get started then. So why would you be considering something like crowdfunding? For many of you here today, you may be familiar with other forms of fundraising, and that might be in-person fundraising, that could be applying for grants, and that might be something you do kind of periodically and quite regularly for your clubs and your organizations. You may well have felt the pinch in terms of those kind of grants that are available these days. It's quite a competitive area. We know kind of generally looking at the grant kind of space that there is a lot of competition out there. And sometimes it can be that when you need the money for your particular activity, it doesn't fit in line with some kind of funding windows and things like that in terms of applying for more traditional grants. So the nice thing about crowdfunding is it can really help to fit with your schedule and your needs. It's something you can do at any time of the year. It's something that can have a really quick turnaround time for you if that's what you need. And it's a great way to kind of factor in diversifying those income streams for your organization or your club, which we all know is incredibly important. You want to make sure that you've got different areas in which you're bringing in income into your organization so that you're not reliant on just one specific income stream, whether that be membership fees or grants or, you know, revenue in terms of kind of sale of merchandise. You want to make sure you're diversifying for many different reasons. It can reduce the financial risk to your organization. It can actually increase that financial stability over the long term. You could potentially unlock some new opportunities as well. So by doing something like a crowdfunding campaign, it can really push you to make new connections. Everything is very much supporter focus and it's out in the public domain. So you're kind of telling your story and building awareness around who you are, which can lead to some really lovely connections, partnerships, sponsorships going forward as well. Can also help you to be flexible and adaptable depending on your financial need and what's happening in the kind of grant space and funding space around you. You can really create a campaign and run a campaign relatively quickly if that's what you need. Can also help you to actually strengthen that donor engagement. So it's a brilliant way for you to connect with people that are actually supporting you, whether that be financially, whether that be volunteers that are coming and spending their time with you. As I mentioned previously, it's all out in the public domain, and it's a great way for you to actually shout about people's support and building upon those relationships. And it can also be a really innovative way for you to fundraise. There are lots of different ways that you can use a platform like Crowdfunder UK to raise funds, and running a campaign which is potentially eligible for match funding is one of those ways, and that's what we're going to focus on today. So it can be a great thing to factor into your fundraising strategy overall. And obviously, we're going to focus on extra funding and the match fund opportunity from Sport England. One thing I would say is, even if you were not eligible for that, let's just say, fingers crossed everybody is that's on the call today. Even if you found you weren't eligible, I would highly recommend thinking about crowdfunding as a way to raise money and factoring it into your fundraising strategy overall, because there are lots of benefits that we'll go through in a moment to actually running a campaign. So Crowdfunder UK is a rewards-based platform. And what we mean by that is you have the ability to offer a benefit of some kind in return for a financial contribution. And that could be something that you have capacity to deliver. So that might be coaching, discounted coaching. That might be hiring of your venue at a discounted rate. That might be something like a community fun day where people buy a ticket to it. It could be merchandise, it could be products. We would also recommend that you go out to your local business community as well and see if they could potentially gift you a reward. And that could be tickets to an event, a meal for two at the local restaurant, all of these kinds of things that you might traditionally be looking to source for an in-person raffle, let's say. You can actually list those as rewards on your page for different price points. And you could then actually market those to your audience. You know, come along, make a specific pledge of this amount and claim your reward. So it's a great way to incentivize people's giving. And it also is a lovely way for you to give something back to them for supporting you. So how does it work? Well, first and foremost, you'd sign up for a free to access account on crowdfunder.co.uk. You'd create your unique page. So that's going to be your forward-facing page, almost like a window, a shop window into who you are and what you're doing. You're going to tell your story and explain your idea. So why are you fundraising? You're going to set a target. So you need to decide how much money you need to raise. And then you can also decide how long you need to raise that money. So how long are you going to run your project for? You can then decide to go on and add rewards if that's something that sits with you. We know that adding rewards can increase people's donations from around 20 to 30 pounds on average, upwards to around 50 to 70 pounds on a project that has rewards. So they can be really impactful in terms of boosting the amount of money you're raising. So I would recommend adding them if you feel you have capacity. And also, you'd be looking at any of the extra funding that you could be eligible for. So, that match funding opportunity that we've mentioned. You will be able to apply for that whilst your project is still in draft. So, while you're curating it and sourcing those rewards and making sure the page looks lovely, and you would have those approvals potentially before you launch your campaign. So, I again recommend looking at what you could be eligible for during those planning stages of putting your project together. Also, be creative with those rewards. So, a lovely variety of different offers at varying price points. Those are going to be the things that really incentivize people to claim those on your page. You would then go on to launch your project. At that point, you would set your project live and it would show public facing on our website. And it would then be up to you to share that project link, so the project page link, with your networks. So that's going to be initially friends, family, people that are close to you and the project. And then you'll start kind of building outwards and maybe sharing that on social media. Could well be in local press, radio, all those kinds of things as well, and into that wider community. You will need to make sure that you are directing people to your project page so that they can make those digital donations onto the page directly. I mentioned at the beginning of the session some of those benefits that we see with crowdfunding, which are not always something that people think about when they're starting to raise money. They're going to be thinking about, of course, the fundraising need and the fact that they need to bring this money in to get their project off the ground. But these are things I'd like you to bear in mind when you're considering crowdfunding. One of the benefits is developing validation in what you're doing. So it can really help to not only build your confidence in your own idea, but you can see if there's actually an appetite within your community and within your network for that idea too. So it can be a really low risk way of testing the water to see if what you're trying to do is going to land well with the people that you're hoping to impact. And that in this case is going to be your local community, and obviously your sports and physical activity community as well. So both demographically and also those direct beneficiaries. It can help to build awareness around not only what you're doing, but yourselves as an organization. Quite often we find, which is really interesting, that when certain clubs and organizations start putting a crowdfunding page together and launch it, they'll get comments from members of the community saying, oh, we didn't realize that you were a registered charity, or we didn't realize that you actually were pretty much solely run by volunteers. That's really interesting to us. Now we understand the need. We just thought that you were kind of a money-making enterprise that could be self-sufficient. We didn't even realize there was a need. So actually building awareness around not only who you are and what you're raising money for, but the potential challenges that you might be facing as an organization as well. That can be quite scary for people, but actually putting everything out there and being transparent with your potential supporters is really, really beneficial and can really help to build those relationships as well. We do encourage you to build those networks wherever possible. And you can get noticed by a wider audience. And there's ways and tips and tricks to help you do that. Everybody that does donate to a crowdfunding campaign will automatically become an advocate for that campaign. We're advocates for projects here at Crowdfunder, ones that we see come through the platform and resonate with us. People that donate to yours because it's resonated with them will go on to talk to their friends, their family about the fact that they've supported this great campaign. So that in itself is organically growing your network. So wherever possible, you're going to have calls to action for those people. So when somebody is supporting you, that's wonderful. You want to go back to them and say, thank you so much. Please, can you now share our page with your networks too? And there's ways you can do that really effectively. You will no doubt develop new skills. For some of you, just the thought of kind of fundraising digitally might feel a little bit overwhelming. We'll make sure that we can upskill you so you've got all of the relevant tools at your disposal to do it effectively. But things like networking, creating an engaging page, creating content for social media, all those types of things might be new to you as individuals or as an organization, but can actually be really useful to use throughout the future of the organization as well. So think of it as learning new skills that are going to be transferable into different areas of what you're doing. And then, of course, there's the extra funding offer that we have, which is what we're going to talk in more depth about today. We work with both national and regional partners, and we have, I think, more than £10 million worth of extra funding now that is available to be distributed to eligible projects. Okay, so why is it that sports organizations and physical activity organizations crowdfund so well? And we know that we do because we've seen it time and time again, and we've had a really wonderful relationship with Sport England, Sport Northern Ireland, Sport Wales, and British Cycling in the past, where we've been able to support these predominantly grassroots clubs raise the money that they need to successfully. Ultimately, you have the recipe already for a very effective crowdfunder. No doubt you have a ready-made crowd. So you already have people that are interacting with you that have a shared passion with what you're doing, whether that is club members, whether that is beneficiaries to the projects that you're already running, whether that is local, other local community groups that you're supporting or venues in which you're using, you already have this crowd around you. You have that shared passion that I mentioned. And more than likely, there is a team of people that you can call upon to help you do this. It's very rare that there is just one person that's kind of heading up an organization in this sector. There's normally a group of people, whether it's volunteers, parents of club members, there's usually people you can draw upon in order to help you do this. No doubt you're well known in your community. And this is a chance to become even more well known in your community. And with that comes those networks and those relationships that you can tap into in order to share your project far and wide. You have the potential ability to set things like fundraising challenges and activities for your local community, especially if you have a venue that you can use and you can actually do a fundraising day or an activity. It might be that you pit different teams against one another. You could have adults versus kids, parents versus kids, all those kinds of things where you could do some exciting challenge or activity. Now, in terms of networking, again, being known in the community is really helpful. You can go around and speak to local businesses or even those that engage with you on a daily basis in terms of, practicing the sport with you, being a part of the organization. What rewards might they be able to offer you, and can they be relied upon to share the project as well? So always make sure you've got those calls to action in your back pocket. So please share, donate, offer a reward if you can. Now, it might be that you've even got some either local celebrity or kind of, you know, nationwide, globally known celebrity that's come through the ranks either in your organization or in the sport or physical activity itself. Can you get in touch with them? The internet's a wonderful place. You can contact most people. Whether you'll get a response or not, who knows? But it's definitely worth a try. And then, of course, alumni as well, maybe some well-known local people that have come through the ranks of what you're doing. Again, lean upon them to see if they might be a bit of a spokesperson and an advocate for what you're doing. And don't be shy when shouting about the wonderful community impact that you have within your local community, both in the past, so what you've already been doing, and what you hope to achieve in the future once you've been able to raise the money that you need to in order to do X, Y, and Z. It's always a really good idea to make sure you're shouting about that as much as possible. So, talking about sports clubs as a whole, then, so far, when we've been working with these different sport partners, as I mentioned, Sport England, Sport Northern Ireland, Sport Wales, and British Cycling, we have seen more than 7,200 projects, so sports projects, come through the platform with more than 450,000 supporters. So, that's a huge amount of individuals within local communities that are backing their projects. Those projects have raised £39.5 million between them. It will be more than that now, I'm sure. And we've seen £11.3 million worth of that extra funding get distributed from our sports partners alone. So the four that I mentioned, that does not include any of our additional partners as well. What you can do, which is really exciting, is you can receive pledges from multiple funding partners. So you don't just have to choose one and apply. If you've been matched with Sport England and your local authority and one of our nationwide kind of corporate partners, make sure you apply for all of those. And you could be lucky enough to receive 2 or 3 different pledges towards your campaign. So a really great way to boost the amount of money that you're raising. And somebody that can tell us all about the wonderful opportunity from Sport England, what a great segue that was, is Becky Evans. Hi, Becky, how are you?
Hi, Zoe. I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to leave everyone in your capable hands. Please, can you give me a shout to move on slides because I'll take myself off screen. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, yeah. So my name's Becky Evans. I'm one of the investment advisors who work out the investment management team at Sport England. If you've called our helpline or dropped an email to us to ask us about the movement fund, it's probably myself or one of my colleagues that have responded. Um, So the Movement Fund offers awards of between 300 and £15,000 for organisations that are delivering projects that challenge inactivity and inequalities. Um, so as long as you can tell us about how your project can challenge inactivity, then we could consider an application from you. We do have priority groups, so those are listed there. So if you're looking to apply to the Movement Fund, what we want to know is how your project or challenge in activity, and if you will be targeting any of our user groups. We don't expect you to be targeting every single priority group, but if your project is supporting one of our priority groups into regular activity, then we do want to hear from you. Yeah, so there's 15,000 available. If you are looking to go down the crowdfunding route, then we can provide 50% of your target up to 15,000. So for example, if your project costs you 20,000, then we could provide 10,000 and you'd need to raise 10,000. We can fund any not-for-profit organisations, so charities, schools, sports clubs, community interest companies. When you are completing your application, so also, Zoe, are you okay to go to the next slide? Yeah, okay. So there's two ways you can apply to the Movement Fund. You could either go to Sport England's website directly, read through the guidance and apply that way. Or if you're already crowdfunding or you intend to crowdfund, you can also apply through Crowdfunder UK. To do that, you will be matched automatically with the Movement Fund. You'll have a short application form to fill in. Within that application form, please tell us how your project will challenge inactivity. That is a major one. If your project is providing an opportunity for any of our priority groups to participate in regular activity, and how much and what the need is, especially. Okay, so if you've got, for example, a waiting list, if you've had expressions of interest, if you've had conversations locally so that you know that this project is needed, tell us about it. Tell us about the demand for the project, how you know it's needed, and how you know it will be supported. Okay, so how that works in a practical sense. So if you were to apply to us and we were offer you a crowdfunded pledge, then we would need you to raise 25% of your target from at least 25 unique supporters. At that point, our pledge will land, and then you need to raise the remaining 25% to lock in our pledge and meet the conditions of the award. If you're lucky enough to get to target within the duration of your campaign, you can then add a stretch target and raise more money for any other projects that your club or organisation need to raise money for.
Hi, Becky. Thank you. I know what the next slide is, so I've just jumped back in. That is
Yeah.
fabulous. Thank you very much. Becky is with us for the whole session. So if there's any questions specifically around the Movement Fund, please drop them into the chat box or the Q&A. Um, and we are going to hear in a minute from Stuart, who's going to talk through his project. So again, a little bit more insight into what's involved as well. Thank you, Becky. Becky's going to hang fire in the wings and wait for the Q&A. Thank you, Stuart, for joining us today.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Zoe. Good afternoon to everybody.
Would you mind telling us a little bit more about your project? What I will do just before you get started, actually, if I can see it here, you should all have access to a resource tab, which should be along the bottom of the screen, which has got all of the different resources for today in there. I can't see it on mine, that's why I'm querying it. But I will just make sure that if not in the chat box, I'll drop some links in there as well. For example, to Stuart's project and to the Movements Fund. So you can click on those and have a little look as well. And we will make sure we send it through in the follow-up. So you'll be able to look at everything in your own time. But back to you, Stuart. Please could you give us a little bit of a background? What was the fundraising need? Why did you think kind of crowdfunding would work for you? And a bit more about the Shaftesbury Lido as well, please.
Okay, yeah, I'll do my best. So the project was to carry out essential renovations to Shaftesbury Lido, which is Dorset's only Lido. And the situation was that we'd been kind of looking at longer term developments, and then towards the end of last season, so getting into the autumn, we found out that our filtration system was on its last legs, and it really didn't have the capacity that it needed. And also that doing the work on the filtration system, and this is a very old pool, its origins go back into the 19th century, that doing that would also require the old liner, which was also on its last legs, to be taken out and replaced. So we suddenly saw we had quite a project, and that we also, if we didn't do it, we might be able to sort of continue next year, but we would have to have reduced capacity in the pool. That would undermine the sustainability economically. So we saw this as something that needed to be done quite urgently. And just to say a little bit about who we are here, I chair a group called the Friends of Shaftesbury Swimming, as you can see there, which is really an informal community group. We aren't constituted as a charity, but it's the Shaftesbury Town Council, which is a small town council in Dorset, which actually owns and runs the pool. And I also chair a swimming advisory committee for them. So they are the kind of formal legal entity here. We are the community support group, but we work together very closely. And when we found we had this need, we had discussions, obviously, with the town council, and the total cost was going to be £120,000, which is quite a lot of money, particularly for a small town council. To their credit, they said they would put up some of the money, and that involved, discussions in the council, voting, the precept for the rates and all those sorts of things. We said we would work with them to try and, in a sense, match fund or more their contribution. And we were able initially to secure, we bid actually to Dorset Council for something called a capital leverage fund, and we got 25,000 from them, but again, conditional on their funding being matched. And we also got some other bits from local charities, and actually something from an international foundation, which slightly surprised us, but that was good. But we were then left with about 30,000 that we needed to raise. And we were looking around, and we approached initially actually the National Heritage Lottery Fund because of the pool being old, but they couldn't help us in this instance, but they put us on to Sport England. And at that point, we had discussions. I can't remember if it was with Becky or one of her colleagues who were very helpful, and they mentioned the Movement Fund. So we came into this from the angle that we didn't initially think about a crowdfunder, but we made an application to Sport England for the Movement Fund, and they gave us an offer of £15,000 conditional on us running a crowdfunder in order to raise the other 15,000. So that's how we got into it.
Which you did incredibly successfully. So, I mean, I've taken the slide away because I quite like actually seeing people's faces, not these tiny little things, but 233 supporters of your campaign. So that's 233 members of your community got behind you, which is massive. That's actually a huge numbers when it comes to support. And you actually ended up raising just, well, 31,000 and some, didn't you, in order with your successful campaign. Were there any of those benefits that I mentioned at the beginning that you noticed throughout that? So obviously you've raised the amount of money that you needed to, so that's a massive tick. But obviously you didn't come at this thinking you were going to crowdfund. So it must have been a little bit daunting as well, which I completely appreciate. Was there anything you can reflect on now and kind of think, well, actually, we did notice that people are a little bit more aware of what we're doing, or we did have some great conversations with people that maybe might lead somewhere, or new interested members, whatever that might be. Did you pick up on any of that throughout the campaign, or even now looking back?
Yeah, I think it's definitely had benefits beyond, obviously it was huge benefit raising all the money, but I think, some of the things you put up in your slide, I think it has added awareness profile. It's also meant that we have kind of given confidence to the town council and Dorset Council, because in a sense they were putting up money and we said we would, try and raise as much as we could. I think you talked about learning. I'd never done anything like this before and was learning on the job. So I now have the confidence that we could do a crowdfunder again. And there's some things I would do maybe slightly differently, but it all worked out. One thing which I think is also a longer term benefit, but and you may want to come to rewards, but one of the rewards we offered was to businesses, and we hadn't previously had any kind of poolside advertising. And one of the members of the Friends of Shaftesbury Swimming sort of said, well, they'd seen it at the rugby club or something like that. Could we do something like that? So we offered poolside advertising as one of our rewards, and we're going to have 8 poolside advertisements as a result. We're charging at the moment, I think, 250 quid for each of those, but we think that will be a continuing source of revenue. So that's for a year. So each year we may be able to raise £2,000 from businesses advertising. We know that there may be others, we may be able to do more. So there was a kind of ongoing source of revenue which was opened up, which will help with the sustainability of the pool. So that's one of the longer term benefits we've noticed.
That's really good. And actually, that's the one thing I noticed with your campaign is when I was kind of looking from the back, side of things in the admin, and I could see that actually some of your higher price rewards such as that, £250 for the advertising, there was really great uptake in that. So actually it's exactly that, isn't it? It's understanding who you might then kind of promote that reward to and what that mutual benefit is, if you like, with the crowdfunding campaign. And that's something that I didn't necessarily mention at the beginning, but for everyone to bear in mind is that actually the whole process of doing this is quite collaborative, like as a community. Although you're the ones, at the Lido that are kind of raising the money and doing this thing, ultimately it's going to benefit those around you. And even throughout the process, it can be quite collaborative in the sense of, well, if somebody's offering you a reward, maybe you're going to promote that within your social media, or you might kind of put a little note of thanks up onto a website or something. And also in this instance, it's like, well, actually, we're offering a reward of sponsorship, but now you're going to have your banner for all of those, community members to see. So it's finding that line, isn't it, with everything where actually it's about that mutually beneficial kind of approach. And that was great to see with yours. In terms of the application process then, so you actually came at it through Sport England, and then obviously you were prompted to crowdfund. How did you find the application process, and kind of then going on to crowdfund, so needing to create that page and all of those types of things? Was the application process relatively straightforward for you compared to maybe traditional grant funding applications you might have done in the past, would you say, or are they on par?
I think what I would say is I don't think we found it particularly onerous or difficult. So I can remember very vaguely doing the Sport England application, and we were able to kind of bring out, the project wasn't specifically, say, for, a priority group, but we were able to bring out that the pool there are a lot of people who are doing aquafit, who are rehabilitating, we have children learning to swim, we have elderly people, doing their few lengths and, keeping moving and both the physical and mental benefits of that. And that seemed to be kind of sufficient. Obviously, we got the offer from Sport England. I think it was confirmed. I think it was right at the end of January. We then, in somewhat senses, put pressure on ourselves because we knew we had coming up on the 16th of February. We had an event called Slice, which was the Shaftesbury Lido Ice Swimming Championship Extravaganza. So we kind of knew we had this event where we were getting a lot of people, not only from Shaftesbury, but actually from across the country, and we could use it as a fundraising event. So we kind of said, well, we don't want to miss that opportunity. So, and by the time we'd sort of confirmed everything with Sport England, we had almost a sort of couple of days almost to kind of fill in the stuff on the actual crowdfunder site. So but that was, relatively straightforward to do that. So we actually launched it, I think, on sort of halfway through the Friday before the Sunday's championship. So and we raised at the swimming championship, the ice swimming, I think it was over £3,000. We had raffles and whatever. One thing we found though, actually, which I kind of learned from that a little bit, it took a while for, say, that money to sort of go into Shaftesbury Town Council, all be processed, and sort of then go into the crowdfunder. We couldn't do it in a way that it sort of directly went into the crowdfunder at the event, and therefore I remember in the sort of first week or so, and we only set 28 days for the actual money to be raised. We thought we wanted to give it momentum, and we also wanted to get the work underway as quickly as possible. So we only gave it 28 days, but during that first week, it felt a bit slow. When it sort of says, you've raised £200 and you're at, 99% of your 30,000 or something like that. And I think it would have been good if we could have. I think if I was doing it again, I kind of would have tried to organise more things that could go into the crowdfunder during that first week. We did pick up momentum, obviously, quite strongly after that, but it was a bit kind of nerve-wracking when you're thinking, actually, is this actually going to work? We seem to have a long way to go.
That's really good advice. It's always brilliant being able to look back, especially because you were successful regardless, but being able to look back now and go, actually, maybe I did miss a trick on that one and I could have done it, with a little bit more planning, we could have done that. But also at the same time, it was really, really strategic of you to make sure you captured that event during the fundraising and the crowdfunder, because that would have not only, yes, it was a little bit kind of the logistics of then paying that on was a little bit timely, and that could maybe be kind of changed up in the future. But in terms of an awareness building event as well for what you were doing, there could well have been people there that maybe weren't able to donate on the day, but could have gone away and donated a few days later, a week later. So really, really strategic and clever thinking to make sure you were live and kind of able to take donations during that event. Stuart, I'm gonna, if it's okay with you, I'm gonna jump back into the slides for a moment, and I can see some questions are coming through. I'd love to have you back on towards the end of the session in about 5-7 minutes, and then we can have some questions from the audience if that's okay. Thank you
Okay,
so
yes,
much. We'll
of
see you in a little
course.
bit. Thank you. Okay. So hopefully that's given you all some inspiration. What a great project. And yeah, utilizing those days that are coming up in your calendar anyway, where you've got things going on is a really, really clever thing to do. Now, something that always comes up with crowdfunding is how do I connect with my crowd? And that's the key really to a successful crowdfunding campaign is how do you connect with those around you that are going to make donations and share your project and potentially offer rewards. The best way to be doing it is throughout the planning stage to actually, if you can, create something called a network map, or we call it a network map anyway. You want to think about your audience as a whole, so the community around you and your networks, and you're going to break that down into bite-sized chunks because it can be really overwhelming looking at your whole community and thinking, well, how on earth am I going to speak to or communicate with all of these different people in all of these different areas? Some I know personally, some I've never met. So the best thing to do is break it down into different areas, and you can group certain groups of people together. So friends and family, they're going to be your core audience, along with potentially fellow volunteers, colleagues, people you work with professionally that you have a close relationship with. They are always going to be the people you reach out to first to secure some of those donations as soon as you go live, before you then start shouting about it to the world, because you want to make sure you've got a bit of money on that campaign before you then go on and tell everybody that you've got this campaign running. Pardon me, because success breeds success. If somebody a few steps removed from your campaign or your organization comes along to the page, takes a look at it, and sees that you've already got money raised on there, they're more likely to donate because it looks credible, it looks valid, it looks like it's en route to success. So, wherever possible, secure some of those donations from your core network to land as soon as your project goes live. I like to recommend you have a bit of a soft launch for friends and family and those that are close to you. And then maybe a few days later, you start thinking about actually launching it a little bit more public facing. And that's going to be potentially into your social media channels. That could be wider into the local business community, local organizations, even, schools, uh, PTAs, those types of organizations too can be really helpful. Ultimately, piggyback onto other people's networks as well. In terms of how you're going to approach all of these different groups of people, really try as best you can as to keep it varied and keep it personal wherever possible. So if it's a friend, have a conversation with them, drop them a WhatsApp or Messenger message, however you would normally communicate, stick with that. Try to avoid just sending blanket emails to everybody on your list in the hope that it lands and you get donations. It's not very personal. Here's just a snapshot of what might be a good idea to help you keep on track of that. And that way you can refer back to it at any point and see, who's engaged, who hasn't. Do I need to do a little bit more promotion in that area? So if we look, for example, if your audience, so your little bubble is going to be local residents, how might you communicate with those people? You might think about putting a message out into the local kind of resident Facebook group. You might think about contacting the local press. Maybe there's a local newspaper or magazine that runs near you that you can send a press release over to, let them know you're launching your campaign. And the status for that is that you have joined the Facebook group and that you've sent a press release. So you might have joined that group, put a post up, sent that press release. That's all in hand. You can check and see what's happened with that in a few weeks. Again, maybe with the local leisure centre, the best way there is going to be word of mouth. So go in and speak to somebody. It could be putting up some posters with a QR code that you can actually download from your campaign, which will direct people straight there. Status is you've gone, you've spoken to the manager, you've dropped off some flyers. They're going to pop them on the reception desk for everyone that comes in. They might even pop a poster up for you too. They could even offer you a reward. So that's another conversation to have with them. And then you've got the local primary school. So again, word of mouth, conversations at the school gates, friends that have got children there, make sure they're talking to everybody. Maybe you want to run a fundraising event at the school, through the school, quite often, especially primary schools might run things like non-uniform days or bake sales and then donate the money they raise to a specific cause. And that could be a local crowdfunding campaign for a community initiative as well, such as yours. Think about those PTA WhatsApp groups. Who is in charge of all of those at the school? Can they put a message out for you as well, please? If you've got some kind of post that they can reshare or, a flyer or leaflet that they can actually make sure is going out to people, even better. Do the legwork for them, and you're more likely to see the results of them sharing that on your behalf. We've mentioned extra funding a lot. I just want to highlight that we do work with lots of extra funding partners across the country. So do make sure that you're checking all funds that you might be eligible for. And if you are matched with them when you start putting your campaign together through our amazing computer system, you can apply through your project dashboard and you can apply for more than one fund and you can receive money from more than one fund as well. Okay, in terms of telling your story, it's really important to be as engaging as you can be when you're putting your project page together. So do make sure that you let your audience and your supporters know who you are, why you're raising money, how their money's going to be spent. So what the money's going to be spent on, the community impact that you have and are hoping to have, and make sure that you're really brightening that up with some engaging images. If you can, put a video on the top of the page as well. That can help people get a real understanding of what you're doing in a short amount of time. It doesn't need to be long. It doesn't need to be professionally shot or edited or highly scripted. It just needs to be personal. It needs to be about a minute to a minute and a half long, if that. And it just needs to say who you are, what you're doing, why you're raising the money, and how people can support you. You might find that people that are short on time will watch that video, and that will be the thing that helps them to make their mind up whether they either donate or continue to read the rest of the page. So it can be a really crucial part to kind of engage people right from the beginning when they're looking at your page. Same with just the formatting. Keep some nice bold headers on the tops of paragraphs to lead people into what that paragraph is about. Pick out any of that key information in bold. Make sure you've got great images that kind of highlight what you've been talking about throughout the page as well. Keep it person-centered with a human interest point wherever possible. People like to understand other people's journeys, and it resonates with them on more of a level than just kind of lots of either animated shots or graphics or just pure kind of architectural designs of what you're trying to do, drone footage. That's all very shiny and corporate and could work in a different setting. For this, it's all about almost creating that page as if you're talking to a friend. Keep it quite informal, keep it personal, and that's going to resonate with people in the best way. Again, we've mentioned rewards quite a lot throughout today's session. Be creative with those. There's a few examples of the types of things that we've seen coming through on the right hand of the slide there. I just want to draw your attention to some of the data that we were able to pull from the previous fund that we had with Sport England, which was the Active Together Fund. What they were able to ascertain is that projects that had between 0 and 5 rewards on average had 106 supporters, with the average crowd pledge, so people donating this amount of money to the project, of £52.85. Now, if those reward numbers increase, so if you had more rewards with, more variety, more price points, the average supporters of those projects were 153, and actually the average crowd pledge leapt up to £92.12. So, almost doubling, kind of. I'm going to say doubling because it's more exciting. You're almost there when in terms of boosting the amount of money that people are giving on their donations. So really do bear it in mind as something that can help bring more money into your campaign. Now, Stuart mentioned a fundraising day that they were having, a fundraising event, the Slice event that was happening, which is sounds like a really exciting event, actually. I'd be interested in something like that. One thing that you can do is you can encourage other people to fundraise on your behalf. So this might be something Stuart considers for the future. So what you can do is you can become a multiplier on Crowdfunder. And what that does is it enables other people to fundraise on your behalf. They click a button on your page, fundraise for us, or become a fundraiser, and they are prompted to put together their own little pages. So they are connected directly to your main page. So they don't need to enter any of their financial details. They can populate that with images and text and make it personal to them and their audience and their challenge, and they can promote it to their networks. Anybody that donates to their fundraising campaigns, all of the money raised by those will automatically funnel onto your page. You can share your rewards offer with these kind of little fundraising pages too. So anybody supporting those fundraisers can access your rewards. Sounds really complicated, but it's not. It's really straightforward and easy to manage in your admin. Ultimately, it gives people the power to be able to fundraise on your behalf, which again is a really lovely thing for people to be able to do if they have capacity to do that. And it might be that you can even set a fundraising challenge for people and encourage them to set up their own fundraising pages. Now, we've got loads of support on offer to help you to achieve your fundraising goals. We've got webinars such as this. We have Ask the Expert sessions as well, where you can come along and speak to us and speak to members of the team at Crowdfunder and ask any questions that you have. It's an informal virtual drop-in. You just come along with a cup of tea and ask us some questions. We've got a great knowledge hub full of loads of information on every stage of crowdfunding. And then once you've signed up, you will start receiving tailored emails from us, just making sure that you've got all the information that you need and signposting you in the right direction. We have a brilliant customer support team of real people, and they are the ones that have created the whole of the help centre as well. So anything that you can think of in terms of questions, the chances are there is a guide or an FAQ or a helpful kind of thing for you to use in the help centre. If you can't find the answer there, then please do pop along to a Q&A, ask us personally, or contact support. And then we have a live project dashboard, so you can actually monitor and manage every aspect of your campaign throughout that dashboard, such as applying for extra funding, extending a project, closing a project, downloading, your supporter details, downloading gift aid reports, all of those wonderful things you can manage through that dashboard. Okay, We have some time left. We may well run over by a minute or two. We did start a few minutes later because we were allowing people to kind of to join the room. So do feel free to stay with us. It'd be great to get Becky and Stuart back on the screen and we can go through some of the questions that have come through. Thank you both. Let me just spotlight us all. So hopefully everybody can see us all. And let's see if we've got any questions coming through. I noticed that you've been in the chat box, Becky. Thank you so much. Has there been any questions that you've picked out for this part of the session?
Yeah, so somebody asked if there's a deadline. At the moment, there's no imminent deadline for the movement fund. So it's a rolling program. So that means you again, like with crowdfunding, you can stick to your own timescales. Also, David asked about using secondhand goods as rewards, and yeah, any rewards. There is such a variety of rewards. I would, if you are looking to crowdfund, I would definitely recommend looking at previous campaigns and getting a few ideas off campaigns as to what rewards you can add. Like Zoe mentioned, there's such a vast variety, and there's been some very unique rewards used over the last few years that I've known of Crowdfunder. So secondhand goods, absolutely. I don't know whether it's worth just mentioning about campaign length. So with crowdfunding, with Movement Fund, as an extra funder, we have a criteria where we would like campaigns to be completed within 10 weeks. However, we do recommend actually running your campaign over a shorter period of time for up to 28 days to 6 weeks is what we find is one of the optimum times, because it's a short burst of campaigning for the people that are running the campaign. But also it keeps on people's minds. If it goes for longer than that, obviously, you can lose a bit of motivation and your crowd can lose a bit of motivation and engagement. So a shorter period of time is often better than trying to stretch it out a bit longer.
Thanks, Becky. I wonder if I could ask Stuart actually, just off the back of that. So you did have a relatively short campaign, didn't you, Stuart? And you said that you obviously had the fundraising event at the beginning. Did you find, you said it kind of started to build up from that point, like maybe towards the end of the first week. Did you find that there was another kind of drop off in engagement? And did you have to do anything in terms of trying to re-engage the supporters? What was your kind of plan to make sure that there wasn't like a drop off? Or if there was, how did you boost those donations again? Sorry, you're on mute. Oh, sorry, Stuart. I thought I could do it from here, but it's not letting me do it. It just says ask to unmute. Might be at the bottom of your screen on the left there. Should I come back to you in a moment? Feel free to jump in. I'll give the crowdfunder answer and then you can jump in a mo. So in terms of the crowdfunder recommendations, we know that there is potentially a bit of a drop off in the middle of a campaign. Like Becky said, sometimes as well, if it's quite a lengthy campaign, people can see that the end date's kind of a long way off and they think, oh, we'll get to it. You know, we'll donate when we can see it's going to make it or not. And the key really is to try and keep the whole of the campaign engaging. So you do need to kind of live and breathe it whilst it's live. And that might be things like adding a fresh reward on there and promoting that specifically. That might be making sure that you're posting updates directly to your page, which is re-engaging your existing audience. We've got Stuart back, so I'm going to hand over to Stuart for some expert advice.
I'm sorry I disappeared then. The button seemed to disappear, or it wasn't where it was previously. But yes, so keeping the momentum reinvigorating. I think for us it was really important how it worked in terms of basically Sport England kind of hold back their 15,000, and then when you've got half of your 15,000, they then kind of make that more explicit. And I think that really helps because then you can see you're basically 75% of the way there, but you still need to raise the other 25% in order to draw down the Sport England money. And the other thing that happened, I've been quite sort of positive about rewards, but in a sense, Sport England pushed us. So we didn't really understand rewards very well. And it was a condition of them sort of pledging their 15,000 when we'd raised our 25,000 that we put up some rewards. So we sort of had to sort of scoot round quite quickly to do that. And some of our rewards were things we had control over, like offering swimming lessons or a series of swims or T-shirts that we already had. But we then sort of went out to get more. I'd say we had a very good meeting with our local Chamber of Commerce, which really helped on the businesses because we were a bit nervous about just going into businesses cold, but that really helped, and that gave us momentum. And I think there was also just the overall feeling of kind of jeopardy helped because we needed to get the whole 15,000 to draw down Sport England's 15,000, and we needed the 30,000 to make up the 120,000, and we couldn't start the work unless we had all of that in place. And we weren't going to be able, the sooner we got started, the sooner we'd be able to get the pool open for the summer. So I think all of that helped to create momentum. We also had some very good support. We have a local community radio station, which is absolutely fantastic, called Alfred Radio. And they did interviews, they did updates. And in terms of the local community, that helped. And we also worked through, we have kind of wider communities. You were sort of doing your sort of map of stakeholders or whatever. There's a strong community of cold water swimmers, which was behind our event, the Slice event. But we also have naked swims at Shaftesbury Lido. So our fundraiser was publicised in British Naturism and on their website. So you've got a whole community there. And they, we know a lot of donations came. So we got a lot of small donations from, a lot of individuals as well as some of the bigger ones.
Amazing. Great advice there, Stuart. Thank you. Becky, as I think we're coming to the top of the hour, but I think as we've got a bit of a swim focus with this particular session, and we've definitely got some swim clubs and organisations in the room. Is there any kind of takeaways in terms of the movement fund and like swimming clubs and the types of things that they might be able to raise money for when they're looking at the movement fund?
Yeah, so with the movement fund, so with swimming clubs, I appreciate there's a lot of challenges out there at the moment for swimming clubs, especially trying to cover pool hire costs and running costs. But unfortunately, through the movement fund, we can't fund the running cost of an organisation. However, if the swim club was aware of a local need to put on more swimming activities or to support a group of people into regular swimming activity, and you can evidence the need for that, then we could consider a project that would look to put on something additional for the swim club, which would help them recruit new members and cover the running costs. Completely appreciate how difficult it is for swim clubs at the moment. So that's one option for them. But obviously, even without the movement fund supporting a project, if a swim club did want to use Crowdfunder as a way of kind of covering those running costs, then that's something that we would absolutely recommend. Even without funding support from us, it's still a good tool to engage your community and let people know about the challenges you're facing and offer them the opportunity to support and help.
Amazing, Becky. Thank you so much. And I guess I'm going to share the final slide now for anybody that does have any specific questions about the Movement Fund or they want to find out a little bit more before going through kind of an application process. Are they able to contact the Movement Fund team, discuss anything a bit further?
Yeah, absolutely. Give us a call on the funding helpline. Speak to myself or one of my colleagues. We're a helpful bunch and we like a chat. So don't ever feel afraid to give us a call or drop us an email, movementfund@sportengland.org.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And thank you, Stuart. Thank you, Becky, for joining me today. And thank you to all of you that have stayed with us for the hour. Hopefully, you've had some good food for thought. You've got some good information to help you go away and consider crowdfunding and also applying for the Movement Fund. We will make sure that we get those follow-up emails with all of the next steps and helpful resources for you. And all that remains is to say good luck with your fundraising journeys. And a massive thank you again to Stuart and Becky. Thank you for joining me today.